أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, so excuse my sniffling and sneezing, but I think I have some kind of an allergy. I think maybe from the dust or something. So alhamdulillah, it's not so bad right now, but sometimes it's so bad that I'm just speaking in between sneezes. So I hope that I don't get that kind of an attack. So if you remember last time, we were talking about first we spoke about how the Quraysh tried to implicate or accuse the Prophet ﷺ of different, different ways of attacking him and trying to find an excuse so that people don't believe in him, because he had a very charismatic personality and he had a very he had a very strong impact, and there was an awe about him that people would just see him and they would just feel attracted to what he has to say. And of course what he was saying, if they heard the Quran, that would immediately hook them to his message. And so to try and reduce this impact that the Prophet ﷺ had on the people around him, they tried to make all these rumors up about him, all made up, all lies, right? And so we talked about that, and we listed about 11 of those. Can you name any 5 of those? Yeah, so they said, let's say that he's a magician and that this is all magic. That's why when you speak to him, yes, fortune teller. What else did they try? Yeah, they said that these are not his, whatever he's saying are stories he's learning from somebody in Yemen and he's teaching him these stories, yes? Yes, they said that he's possessed, that he's possessed by jinn. He's been afflicted by jinn, and so he's just, because of that affliction, he says these things which has an effect on you. Yeah, they said he's mad.
He said that he's doing this for wealth and power.
Yes, they thought that, maybe he wants money, maybe he wants to be the king, maybe he wants to marry beautiful women. So they offered him all this. They said, we'll marry you to the most beautiful women, we'll make you the king, we'll collect wealth and give it to you. And he refused everything because he said, that's not why I'm doing this. Anything else? Yeah, they said that he's a poet and this is all poetry, etc. Okay. And we said that they couldn't physically harm him because Allah's protection was protecting him. So they tried to harm his followers, and they persecuted and they meted out torture to anybody who followed Islam at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ. And one of the ringleaders in this was who? Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl was the worst in meting out this persecution, right? And he even ended up killing a few of the people in his attempts at just torturing them. He meant to torture them, but he ended up killing them. Yes, very good. A woman named Sumayya. She was the first martyr, yes, a person who died in the cause of Islam. The next thing we spoke about was the reaction of the Prophet ﷺ to this persecution, to this to their behavior of accusing him, of making, slandering him, making up lies against him. And so one of the things we said is, when Khabbab came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said to him that, will you not make dua for us? And the Prophet ﷺ was upset. And why was he upset? Because he wanted our ummah to be the best in everything. So he wanted our ummah to be the most patient, our ummah to come out right at the top of everything. And that's why he said to Khabbab, he said that people before you suffered worse things and they were patient. And he said, I want you to be patient. And we extracted some lessons out of that. And we said that in our life, we will go through different stages. We will go through different processes to reach a certain end. And we can't rush that process. We can't hurry up and get to the end. Okay, to get to the finish line, you have to go through some tests, some trials, some good times, some bad times, some difficulty, some hardship, some ease, until you get to the finish line. So, and what is the finish line that we are trying to get to? Paradise, right? We all want paradise. We want to be happy in the end. We all want that happiness. And to get to that ultimate happiness, you have to walk a certain path. You can't just jump and get there, right? So this is why, he said that just be patient. And even now, if you see what is happening with Muslims, what is happening with Islam, you can see that everything is going through a certain process. Ultimately, victory will be ours. Ultimately, Islam will be victorious. And Allah has already told us that. But until that happens, we will see some trials and tribulations and difficulty and hardship and, some good and some ease as well. But ultimately, inshallah, we will get there. Okay. Another example of how the Prophet ﷺ used to deal with these situations with the people of the Quraysh is, we will find in another story that we find in the Seerah. The people of the Quraysh, they just wouldn't give up. So they got together again and they said, okay, we've directly spoken to him, we've offered him everything and he has refused. So they said, now what shall we do? They said, let us get a man from amongst us who is an expert in poetry and in Arabic. Okay, and they said, let's send him to the Prophet ﷺ and see how the Prophet ﷺ is able to defend himself or deal with this man. So they selected a man called Utbah bin Rabi'ah. Utbah bin Rabi'ah was an expert in Arabic poetry, in language, in things like this. And he was also an expert in magic. Because they're still thinking that this man must be doing some magic. How is it that he says these words and everybody just gets mesmerized by these words? So they said, okay, let's send a magician, an expert in magician to him. So Utbah bin Rabi'ah, he went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said to him, tell me, O Muhammad, who is better, you or Abdul Muttalib? Now this is a really tricky question because Abdul Muttalib is the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather, right? And none of us, if we, in our current situation, we cannot put down our grandfather, right? Even if he was a drunkard, if he did anything bad, you speak respectfully about your grandfather, right? In that society, which is like a tribal society, their values are all connected to their tribes. And it is a huge cardinal sin to say anything bad about anyone's tribe. You can't curse someone's lineage or their great-grandfathers or their tribe. So the Prophet ﷺ keeps quiet. He doesn't answer. Then Utbah, and this is obviously a setup, a trick question, right? Then he says to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, he asks him, he says, what about your father, Abdullah? What do you say about him? And the Prophet ﷺ keeps quiet. So Utbah says, if you claim those men to be better than you, because if you're keeping quiet, maybe you're trying to imply that they are better than you, the fact is they worship the gods you have criticized. Because Abdul Muttalib and Abdullah, his father, they were idol worshippers. They believed in Allah, but they also worshipped idols. Yes?
He stayed quiet both times?
Yes, he stayed quiet both times. Okay? And so he says that if you claim those men to be better than you, the fact is they worship the gods you have criticized. And if you claim to be better than them, then speak, so we can hear what you have to say. By God, we have never seen any fool more harmful to his people than you. You have caused division and dissension amongst us, criticized our religion, and so disgraced us in the eyes of the Arabs that the rumor is current among them that there is a magician or a sorcerer amidst Quraysh. So he is basically accusing the Prophet ﷺ of the rumor, which is giving them a bad name, because everybody now is saying that, oh, there's some magician or sorcerer who's living amongst the Quraysh in Makkah. Now, who started this rumor? The Prophet ﷺ did not say, I'm a magician, I'm a sorcerer. But you see how these people, they are dishonest, that even the rumor that they kicked off, they're blaming the Prophet ﷺ for that as well. They're saying, you're the one who has brought a bad name on us, Now everybody is saying that there's a magician who lives here. Now, then Utbah said, by God, it seems all we have to await is for a cry of a pregnant woman, for us all to be at one another with swords, till we wipe ourselves out. So what he's trying to say by saying that a pregnant woman is going to call is he's trying to say that the situation has become so desperate, it's almost like they're on the edge. And any time a huge fight is going to break out, and there's going to be bloodshed, and they're going to end up killing each other over this message of Islam. Okay? And then, until now, the Prophet ﷺ is quiet. He's a very good listener. The Prophet ﷺ was a very good listener. He was very patient. One of us, right, we would have pounced on him by now. That I didn't start that rumor. Why are you blaming me of something I didn't even start, right? But he's quiet. He's taking the blame, taking the nonsense, right? Listening to it. Now Utbah starts offering him things again. He says, do you want status? Do you want wealth? We'll give you this, we'll give you that. I mean, like I said, they just keep trying the same things over and over again to try and just stop him from propagating the message of Islam. Then the Prophet ﷺ, after calmly listening to all his accusations and nonsense, basically what he's speaking really does not make sense, the Prophet ﷺ asked him. He said, "Oh Utbah, are you done? Is that it? Is that all you want to say now?" He replied, "Yes." So the Prophet ﷺ did not respond to Utbah with his own words. He recited from the Quran. And this is what he recites. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حميم تنزيل من الرحمن الرحيم كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون بشيرا ونذيرا فأعرض أكثرهم فهم لا يسمعون. And he continues reciting Surah Fussilat until he gets to this ayah. فإن أعرضوا فقل أنذرتكم صاعقة مثل صاعقة عاد وثمود. And this ayah means, but if they turn away, then say, I have warned you of a thunderbolt like the thunderbolt that struck Ad and Thamud. And in some narrations it says, when the Prophet ﷺ reached this ayah, Utbah tried to cover his mouth. He tried to stop him from saying what he was saying and from reciting what he's reciting. And he said, I ask you in the name of the relationship between us to stop. And he covered his mouth with his hands. And then Utbah goes back to his people who sent him to the Prophet ﷺ. And he's very stressed and he's confused. And he says to them, he recited from the Quran and I did not understand anything he was saying except that he threatened us with a punishment like the punishment of Ad and Thamud. And they knew that the Prophet ﷺ was very honest. They knew that Muhammad ﷺ does not lie. They knew that if he says something, it actually happens and he only tells us the truth. So they're very scared of anything he says. And then the people said to him, to Utbah, they said, woe to you. They said he was speaking to you in Arabic and you said you did not understand him? Because obviously the Prophet ﷺ recited these verses in Arabic. And Utbah said, in the name of Allah, I did not understand what he was talking about. And this makes you realize it's not about the words, it's not about the message. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sealed your heart, and if Allah has sealed your ears, and if Allah has sealed your eyes, then no matter what happens, you will not hear, you will not understand, and you will not see. Even if the truth is happening in front of you, you will just be oblivious to it. And that's why when you do da'wah to someone, it doesn't really depend on you or on your da'wah. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that it is up to you to just convey. Right? It is just up to us to tell people about the message of Islam. Accepting it, internalizing it, thinking about it, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's between Allah and the slave. Right? And so that's why along with da'wah you make dua. You ask Allah to open people's hearts, to guide them, to make them understand the message of Islam. Because we know that this is where your salvation is. We know that your success is in Islam. But you can only tell that to someone. I can only tell someone that, look, if you say La ilaha illallah, if you believe in Allah and worship Him alone, and you obey the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will go to Jannah. You will go to paradise. I can only say that to someone. But for him to understand what I'm saying and to accept it and to act on that, this is not in my control. Like they say in English, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. So it's almost like, this man, he can hear what the Prophet ﷺ is saying, but he's saying, he swore to his people, he said, by Allah, I did not understand a word that he said. So, yes.
Why is God making stop?
That's the only part he understood, that the Prophet ﷺ is threatening him with the punishment, and he was scared that if the Prophet ﷺ says that a thunderbolt will fall on you if you don't accept the message, he's scared that the thunderbolt will fall on me, and he doesn't want that. So he's just trying to stop him because yes, and he knows that whatever the Prophet ﷺ says usually is true. He doesn't make things up. So even though they're making up these lies about him, and they're saying that he's a sorcerer, he's a magician, he's a this, he's a that, but at the end of the day they know that he's not a sorcerer, he's not a magician, he's not possessed by devils, but this man is very honest. And I told you last time, why did I say they were finding it difficult to accept the message?
Because of the tribal rivalry.
Very good. Because of the tribal rivalry. They could not accept that tribe A cannot match the Quraysh, right? Because Quraysh, they can look after the Hujjaj, they have the keys to the Kaaba, they are in charge of so many things. Now they've managed to get some of those jobs, right? Tribe A has managed to get some of those, the importance of those things. If they are beginning to come and become equal to Quraysh in importance, in status, now the Quraysh say we have a prophet. And they said, how are we going to match that? Where are we going to produce a prophet from? So they said, we're not going to accept this, because we can't match it and we're not going to accept it. So it is really just tribalism, arrogance, It's not rejection based on logic. It's not rejection based on haqq. It's rejection based on, superficial things. Okay. One of the things you learn from this is that the Prophet ﷺ, he dealt with different situations in different ways. And one of the things we learn from this is that the Quran is a very, very important tool to use when you're doing da'wah. I have this lady, she doesn't speak English. She only speaks her language, yes?
The Kaaba had keys at that time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the keys are still with the same family who had the keys at that time. So, what we learn is that, that the Quran is a very important tool in da'wah. So, I wanted to tell this woman about Islam. And I was trying to think, where shall I start? What shall I tell her? I think she's Buddhist. And so I thought, the best way to do dawah to her is I gave her a Quran in her language. And I said to her, look, whenever you get some time, please start reading it, start looking at it. Because when you read the Quran and when you see what Allah is saying in the Quran, first of all, you realize this is not a man-written book, right? You realize this is something divine, this is something different from the reach of a human being. And the second thing that you notice is that the message is really powerful. The way it comes directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't match that. No human words can match that. And so this is what one of the things the Prophet ﷺ is showing us here, is that he uses Quran to do da'wah to Utbah, right? And Utbah, is not able to take that, and he tries to stop him. Another story that we will look at is Dimad al-Azdi. Okay, and the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today is the story of Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, but I hope we get to that inshallah. So throughout Seerah you will see different stories of different Sahaba and how they came to Islam, how they become Muslim. Because a lot of these people, right, if you see them in their true colors, in their true situation, you would think they are really far from Islam. Like Umar ibn al-Khattab, what was said about him? It was said that the donkey of Umar will become Muslim before Umar does. That's how impossible it was for anybody to conceive that Umar ibn al-Khattab would consider Islam. But you see some of these people, how they transform, and how Islam transforms them from the jahl of disbelief to the light of Islam and belief. They just, now when we look at some of these people, they are the stars of this ummah. They are the ones on whose back Islam was built, right? And if you look at them in their days of Jahiliyyah, you want to cover your ears or cover your eyes. You don't even want to hear about their lives. Their lives were so messed up. About Umar ibn al-Khattab, I think I mentioned to you before. They said that had he not become Muslim, he would have died at a very young age from alcohol overdose. He used to drink, he was ill-tempered, he had a very, very bad lifestyle. And when he came to Islam, that same man, he becomes one of the top leaders, one of the top amirs of this ummah, one of the top khalifas. So you see how Islam, it takes, you could say, like dirt, and changes it to gold. And we all have the potential for that. All of us, each and every one of us has that gold hidden inside us. And if we just allow Islam, it can bring that gold out of us. All of us have that potential. All of us have that hidden, gem inside us, and it will shine through once Islam shines through, inshallah. Okay. So, Dimad al-Azdi was a man from southern Arabia, and he came to Mecca, and he heard some of the people in Mecca saying that there is a man amongst us who's possessed by jinn, who's possessed by devil or demons. Dimad al-Azdi, he was a professional at removing possession from people, in taking demons out of people. That was his expertise. So he goes up to the Prophet ﷺ with sincere intention to help him, and he says to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I heard that you're obsessed or possessed with jinns, and I'm offering my service. If you want, I can help you, and I can remove the demons from you. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's compassionate, he's soft-natured. He doesn't pounce on this man and say, how dare you make an accusation like that about me. He says to this man, he says, he assumes that this man has been misinformed. So he starts with khutbatul hajah. And he says, Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. This is the khutbatul hajah, right? Which it means, praise be to Allah. We praise Him. We seek His help. Whoever Allah leads aright, no one can lead astray. and whoever Allah leads astray, no one can guide. I bear witness, or I bear testimony, that there is no God but Allah alone, who has no partners or associates. If you say it in Arabic, it sounds very beautiful, right? But when you translate it in English, it gets a bit broken up. But Dimad, when he heard this, he said, "Oh Muhammad, can you please repeat those words again? This is not even Quran. Yeah, this is just words." And so the Prophet ﷺ, he repeats the khutbah again. And he says, "I have never heard something like this." He says, "These words are so wonderful, they are going to reach the depths of the ocean." Meaning to say that these words are going to have a very strong influence on whoever hears them. And then the Prophet ﷺ says to him, "Then pledge allegiance to me." So he says, "Give bay'ah to me if you are impressed by what I have said." And then immediately he extends his hand and he says, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah," that I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, "Oh, it's raining." Yeah. Yes. So is that the storm or is that rain? Okay. Okay. And so the Prophet ﷺ says to him, "How about you pledge for your people?" Because you see, there is a lot of wisdom in one person becoming a Muslim. Because each person is sort of like a chain. Okay, very few of us are completely loners on our own. Most of us are connected, right? You'll have parents, you'll have sisters, you'll have brothers, you'll have cousins, you'll have distant relatives, you'll have near relatives, then you'll have your spouse's relatives. So if you think of each individual is like a net, right? Each individual is like a net. So when one person becomes Muslim, it has a trickle-down effect on everybody. So the Prophet ﷺ says to him, "How about you pledge for your people?" And he says, "And I will pledge for my people." So you give bay'ah, you give like an allegiance, you say that I will support you in whatever you do, and my people will also support you in your cause. So whoever you fight, I will fight. Whoever you befriend, I will befriend, right? So you make like a wala and bara like that. And subhanallah, this man, he came to the Prophet ﷺ to heal him, right? He said, "I will cure you of your possession." And the Prophet ﷺ healed him of the kufr in his heart, right? He took the kufr out and changed it to Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ, he had this air about him. People would just meet him and see him and they would be impressed. And immediately they would be inclined to accepting his message. He had this aura about him. And once an army the Prophet ﷺ sent an army that passed through the village of Dimad, the same man, Dimad al-Asdi. And the leader of the army asked them, "Did you take anything from these people?" And one of the men from the army said, "Yes, I have taken away from them a strong camel." They don't know that are these people Muslim or not. So they just took the camel. And the leader of the army said, "Give it back, because these are the people of Dimad, and the Prophet ﷺ has given them protection." Because once you say your shahada and you come into Islam and you give your bay'ah or your allegiance, now your life, your honor, your blood, your wealth, everything is sacred, right? And it is more sacred than the Kaaba, right? And so you come under the protection of Islam, and the Prophet ﷺ had given protection to these people because they had given bay'ah. Another story is of a man called Amr bin Absa, who was also from Arabia, and he tells his own story in Sahih Muslim. And he says, "In the time of ignorance, I had belief in my heart that the religion of my people is false." Remember, we said that there were many people at the time when Islam had still not spread in Mecca, but they were uncomfortable about worshipping idols or worshipping anything else. Because there were people who would worship the sun, people who would worship the tree, people worshipped idols, but they were uneasy to do any of that. So they quietly, privately, secretly just worshipped Allah. And he said he was one of those people. He said, in the time of ignorance, I was very uncomfortable to worship idols, so I stayed away from it. And he said, I had no belief in worshipping idols, and I knew deep in my heart that this is wrong. And then one day I came to know that there is a man in Mecca preaching a new religion. So I immediately went on my camel to meet him. I came in, but I had to sneak in and secretly meet Muhammad. It was very difficult to come into Mecca and openly meet the Prophet ﷺ and ask him about Islam. Because you know what these people are trying to do. They're trying to nip Islam in the bud. They want to stop spreading Islam. They don't want more people coming from outside and asking about Islam. So they were very aggressive towards anyone who came in and asked about Islam. So he crept into Mecca. And remember, at that time, the cities were very small. The number of people was very small. There was few people. That's why, you know, at the hadith of Jibreel, one of the things they said is that everybody was confused when Jibreel walks in, because they said nobody had ever seen him. Basically, everybody knew everyone. You know, imagine if there was us and maybe 3 times us living in a city. Everybody knows everybody, right? Any new face you see, you're going to know that this person is not from here, this person has come from outside. So he had to creep in quietly and secretly meet the Prophet ﷺ. Then I met Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it must be an amazing thing just to meet the Prophet ﷺ. You know, his face used to beam. They said he was more beautiful than the full moon on a full moon night. And you know, if you have seen a full moon on a full moon night, it's amazing. It's difficult to get your eyes off the full moon. So imagine, you know, what it must be like to meet the Prophet ﷺ. So he went and he met the Prophet ﷺ. And he said to him, I mean, these are simple Bedouins living in the desert. They're not you know, neuroscientists. They're very simple, and their minds are simple, and their questions are simple. So he asked him, he said, what are you? Okay, so he meets the Prophet ﷺ for the first time, and he asked him, he said, what are you? And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, he said, I am a Nabi, or I am a Rasul. He said, what does that mean? Because they didn't know what these words meant, right? Amr bin Absa, this man who's come into Makkah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I was sent by Allah. A Nabi or a Rasul is someone who was sent by Allah. So he said, I was sent by Allah. And so he says, what did he send you with? You see how simple his... And honestly speaking, Islam is not complicated. Islam is very simple. It's not giving you some really complicated equation that you can't really understand. It's a very, very simple thing. So Dimad asks him, what did Allah send you with? And the Prophet ﷺ said, he sent me with a message of worshipping him alone, associating no partners and no gods with him, and to destroy idols, or to destroy anything that is worshipped other than Allah. So he says, can I follow you? Because this appeals to him, because idol worship did not appeal to him, right? But this makes sense to him, that there is an Allah who is above everything and who is in charge of everything, who created everything, and he's the one who deserves to be worshipped. Because if you think about it, if you look at an idol, what has the idol done? You know, when Ibrahim alayhi salam, his father, you know, he used to make idols. And he would give the idols to Ibrahim alayhi salam and say, go and sell them in the shops, in the marketplace, right? When Ibrahim alayhi salam used to sell the idols, he used to say, you know, buy these idols who cannot harm you or benefit you. Buy these idols that can't harm you or benefit you. Because this thing did not sit in his heart. It disturbed Ibrahim alayhi salam to know that I am encouraging people to take this thing which is just made of stone. It can't help me and it can't harm me. What is the point of this? Right? So, Amr, he was already uneasy with this whole idea of idol worship. So when he heard that the Prophet ﷺ came to say, worship Allah, destroy the idols, don't associate partners with Allah. Only worship Allah directly. There's nothing between you and Allah. So he felt, yes, this sort of appeals to me in my heart. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also said that leave what wavers in your heart and follow what your heart is comfortable with, and that is Iman. Like sometimes, you have two choices. And let's say, for example, you're planning a holiday and you're thinking, shall I stay here or shall I travel? The idea of traveling is not sitting in your heart. You're thinking, you know what, it's not justified. Why should I travel? I think I'll be better off here. But you are pushed because of society, because of pressure, because of family, because of whatever, to travel. But you're not comfortable with that idea. So you should go with what settles easily and comfortably in your heart. And that is, part of Iman. So you consult your heart. And in your heart, you're comfortable with the thought of not traveling. So that is really what is good for you. It's not a question of haram and halal. It's just sometimes some things just don't sit in your heart, even though they're permissible. For him, no one is forcing him to accept Islam or to, worship Allah alone. But this is the thing that sits in his heart comfortably. He's happy with this idea. So he says, so the Prophet ﷺ says to him that he sent me with the message of worshipping him alone, associating no gods with him, and to destroy idols. So Amr says, can I follow you? And the Prophet ﷺ says to him, you cannot follow me now. Don't you see my situation? Because he knows that he had to creep into Makkah, he had to meet him privately. So he's saying that right now you can see the situation is very, very bad. So he says to him, but go back to your people, and when you hear that I prevail, then come and see me. Because the Prophet ﷺ knew that he will prevail and that the message of Islam will be superior to everything else. And then Amr said, I left, and I would constantly ask about news about the Prophet ﷺ, about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, you'll see what happens to him. Wait. It's like, these teenagers are so impatient. They just want to get to the punchline that, come on, did he or didn't he? Okay. So he would always ask the travelers, anybody who would come, he would ask them news, any information about Muhammad, is he still hiding? Is he still preaching in secret? Is he preaching openly? And then he said, what is happening with Muhammad? He asked one of the group of travelers once. And until one day he heard that Muhammad ﷺ has migrated to Medina and he has been victorious. So I went to meet him in Medina. So now Amr, he goes to Medina. I approached Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is after many, many years. Because remember, in Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ preached for 13 years, right? Then he goes to Medina. So this is after many years. It's not like after a few months or 1 or 2 years. After many years, he goes to Medina. And he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he said to him, did you know me? Simple man, And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, he said, yes, you are the man who came and met me in Makkah. This is one of the signs of a leader, that he does not overlook even the smallest part of his group. Everything is in his attention, it's in his mind. He has not forgotten anything. It's just like Sulaiman alayhi salam, right? Sulaiman alayhi salam, Allah gave him how many armies? The wind, the jinn, the humans, the animals, the birds. When he's having his meeting, what does he notice?
The birds.
He noticed the hudhud. One hudhud he notices is missing. And he says, where is the hudhud? So this is, one of the signs of a good leader, of a person who actually cares about his followers. a lot of the times, you see people, they have so many followers, they can't really keep track of who is who and where and what, But it's good to be directly in touch with each person, to connect with them, to speak to them, to care about them. This also shows your concern for them, If somebody's missing, to ask, where is such and such? Why haven't they come, So this is one of those things. All right. Now we come to the main story for today, inshallah.
So what happened next? He says you are the man from Makkah.
So he became, he obviously, it's a safe time now for him to become Muslim and to openly, confess his faith. Yeah. I mean, Allahu Alam, perhaps, the man has already become Muslim, but he just doesn't openly say that he's Muslim. He goes back and he waits until Islam prevails. Because if he openly proclaims it, there might be a problem. So yes, in answer to your question, he became a Muslim. Okay, so now we go on to the story of Abu Dhar, which is a really, really beautiful story. And we have another story that I will cover, inshallah, maybe a little later on towards one of the battles. But each of these stories is amazing in its own way. Okay, so Abu Dhar belonged to a tribe called Al-Ghifar. And Al-Ghifar were known to be rough, known to be thieves, known to be looters, like people who steal things while you're traveling. So they ambush your camel or horse, whatever you're traveling on, and they steal your possessions, and then they just either take you or let you go. So they just basically thieves. Okay, and I mean, like I said, they were not what you would call a what's the word? Refined. They were not refined people, educated, well-spoken. They were like I said, they were like rough thieves, They depended on stealing from people to survive, right? They were also disrespectful towards the Ashhurul Haram or Ashhurul Haram, which are the months in which fighting is banned. Okay, so what does anybody know what those 4 months are? Very good. So those are the 3 months which are together: Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram, and Rajab, which is separate. But these are the 4 months in which fighting, warfare, everything was banned. They were the months of peace. And these are the months Allah has told us about in the Quran. So we have to respect them, and we have to, basically cease fire during those months. They didn't respect this, the tribe of Ghifar. And Abu Dhar, he was very upset about this, that why doesn't my tribe respect these months which are supposed to be sacred, where you're supposed to be at peace with everyone. So he decided to leave his tribe and move away because he did not like the fact that they were breaking these rules. And he left basically with his mother and his brother and himself, and they left the tribe. And by the way, the tribe of Ghifar was known in Arabia to be, they were known for killing and looting and etc. So what he did is, when he left with his couple of relatives, he goes to meet his uncle, who is from another tribe. Okay? And he stays with him for a little while. And his uncle really looked after him. He was very hospitable, he was welcoming, and he allowed them to stay with him, and he really looked after them well. He looked after them so well that his relatives became jealous. The uncle's relatives, the uncle's family, became jealous that why is he looking after Abu Dhar and his mother and his brother so well. So they said, okay, let's try and stir up some problem. So they go to the uncle and they said to him, Abu Dhar's brother's name was Unais. They said to him, they said, when you're out of the house, when you're away, Unais likes to come and visit your wife, and he likes to spend time with her, and he likes her.
You said that to Abu Dhar?
Yes. No, he said that to the uncle of Abu Dhar, who's showing all the hospitality, whose house they are staying in.
Unais said that Abu
No. Unais is the brother of Abu Dhar. So one of the relatives of the uncle, he comes and he plants this fitna. And he says to the uncle, he says, when you're out of the house, Unais, the brother of Abu Dhar, he likes to come, he likes to visit your wife, he sits with her, he meets her, and they both like each other. So naturally, the man is not going to be happy about this, right? He is being hospitable, he's opened his doors in his house, and behind his back, this is what's going on. So he was a simple man, he was a good man. You can see he's good at heart. That's why he welcomed them with open arms. So he very openly, he went to Abu Dhar and Unais, and he said that, this is what I have heard. Is this what you're doing? Abu Dhar gets very angry. And he says, how can you say something like that about us? He packs his bags and he says, we're leaving. So the uncle, he wraps himself up in a sheet and he cries out of feeling sorry that why did I believe this rumor and why did I say this to them. He's a very simple kind of man, you can see, and he just cries and cries, but Abu Dhar's mind is made up and he's very upset, so he leaves. He takes his mother and his brother and they leave, and they go to a place close to Makkah, and they settle down over there. And then Unais, the brother of Abu Dhar, he goes into Makkah to do some business. They have to survive, right? Now they don't have anybody who's looking after them, so they need to look after themselves. So Unais goes into Makkah to do some business. He comes back from Makkah and he says he met a man who claims to be a prophet. And he says, I found a man who was preaching a new religion, worshipping Allah alone. And Abu Dhar says, at that time, now Abu Dhar is another one of those people in whose heart this worshipping other things did not sit well. So Abu Dhar says, at that time, I had already worshipped Allah for 3 years and revoked all of the worshipping of idols. So subhanAllah, for 3 years, he had been worshipping Allah alone, without associating partners with. You could say yes. In essence, yes, he's a Muslim. But why could we not refer to him as a Muslim until now? Yes, because there's another part of the Shahada, right? It's La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and that's where we're coming to now. So until now, La ilaha illallah is fine, but he hasn't completed the other part. Okay, let's stop for the other. Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu Wassalam ala Rasulullah. So it was said to him, because he said that I have been worshipping Allah for the last 3 years anyway. So they said, they asked him, they said, how did you worship Allah? How have you been worshipping Allah? Or how did you pray? How were you praying to Allah? So he said, I would pray to whichever direction Allah would point me to, and I would pray in whatever way Allah would guide me to. And I would pray at night until I fell asleep, and only the sun would wake me up in the morning. So basically, he's been praying and doing tahajjud and all of this without even knowing what he's doing. And there isn't a specific way he's doing it. He's worshipping Allah the best way that he can understand of how to worship Allah. Perhaps, Allahu alam, right? It sounds like he has been doing some kind of a salah. Okay, but how he did it, whatever Allah guided him to, and whichever direction, Allah guided him to. Okay. Abu Dhar asked his brother Unais. He said, what does he teach, this man who is, proclaiming another religion? What does he teach? So Unais mentioned some of the teachings of Islam that he had learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he asked him, what do people say about him? Abu Dhar asks Unais. So Unais said that they claim he's a magician, he's a sorcerer, he's a liar. And so Abu Dhar said to him, he said, you haven't satisfied my hunger. I want to go and investigate the matter myself. What the people say might not necessarily be right. So far what they have understood from Unais is that there is a man in Makkah who is telling everybody to worship Allah and not worship the idols. But the people of Makkah are saying that this man, he's a magician, he's a sorcerer, and he's a liar. So this is the news that has reached Abu Dhar. So he says, you know what? The CNN of Makkah is not trustworthy. I want to go and see for myself what exactly is going on in Makkah and what is this man saying and who is this man. And that's a lesson for us, Don't believe what you watch on CNN. Okay. So he says, I went into Makkah and asked the first man I saw in front of me, can you please guide me to Muhammad? Now this was a big mistake. That man immediately started to call the people of Quraysh, and they all came and they beat him up. They beat him up, right? They started pelting him with stones, they punched him, they beat him, they kicked him. All he said was, can anybody tell me where Muhammad is, right? This is the reaction. And he says that they hit me with rocks. Whatever they could get their hands on, they hit me with it. Slippers, sandals, rocks, stones, sticks, whatever, right? He says at the end of it, he said that eventually he became unconscious and he fell down. The man's been beaten up badly by a mob, right? This is one man. He says that eventually, when I woke up, I was like Nusub al-Ahmar. Now, Nusub Ahmar, Nusub were basically the stones or the rocks, the big altars on which they would sacrifice animals for their idols, right? So you can imagine those stones, they were full of blood because you're slaughtering animals on this rock, right? So he said, when I woke up, when I came back to consciousness, I was like Nusub Ahmar. I was basically drenched in blood from head to toe. Okay? So Abu Dhar was a tough guy, right? He went up to the well of Zamzam. He said, I drank some Zamzam and I washed myself. I washed all the blood off myself. And he said, in the narration of Imam Ahmad, it states that he stayed in Makkah for 30 days, trying to find out, about Islam, because he really wanted to know the truth himself, not what people are saying. And for 30 days, he was not able to meet the Prophet ﷺ. They really made it difficult for people to get the message of Islam. They tried everything in their power to stop people from hearing about Islam. Then he says that for this period of time, he had no food. He had nothing, right? He's a stranger in this city. No one is willing to. That's why in those days, you must have heard the hadith, right? That when you keep a guest for 3 days, the guest has a right on you for 3 days, right? And after that, it's sadaqah, and really the person should be doing his own thing as well if he continues to live in your house. Because why is that the case? Because in those days, nowadays people abuse this ruling to save some money. They will go and stay in people's homes. But at that time, there were no hotels, there were no motels, there was no inns, no lodge. If you were a traveler and you went into a city, somebody had to house you. There was Airbnb at that time, which was supposed to be for free, right? You had to stay in someone's house, and that's why that hospitality was given so much status and reward, because it's to encourage you. Otherwise, people will be reluctant. Who wants a headache? Who wants the headache of looking after an additional person? But because there's so much reward, people would, they would almost fight to take the guest, because they want the barakah, they want the blessings, right, and the reward. So, no Airbnb for Abu Dhar. right? He's living near the well of Zamzam. And he's just been beaten up and everything. And for 30 days, he said he just drank Zamzam. And he says, I did not have any food for the entire period except for drinking the water of Zamzam. Now, as a doctor, I will tell you that you can survive on just water for about a month or a little bit more than a month. You won't die, okay? I know you will want food, but you can live without food. You can't live without water, but you can live without food. But the shocking thing is not that the man was just drinking Zamzam. Listen to what he says. And I started picking up weight until I was getting folds on my stomach. Now the Bedouins at that time, they were not like us. They were not going to the gym to get a flat tummy. They had flat tummies. They hardly ate. There was very little going around. Most of them were poor, right? They hardly had any clothes, they hardly had any possessions, and they certainly didn't have much food. So imagine somebody who's just eating a few dates and water, little piece of bread and some water. They literally ate to keep their back straight. They did not have much food. So they were very, very slim and fit people. For somebody like that, you know, when I say folds, I mean like when you sit, your stomach sort of like falls on itself, right? It folds on itself. That's what he's getting from drinking Zamzam. That's all he had. He didn't have any food. And this is just the miracle of Zamzam, that Zamzam can be food and drink depending on what niyyah you're having it with, right?
People would have noticed
Allahu alam, if people noticed it. But I think that was the least of their worries. They're worried that this man is looking for Muhammad and they're trying their best that he doesn't find him. Anyway, one day, look at how he finds the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were these two women who were making tawaf around the Kaaba. Because remember we told you that people used to make tawaf around the Kaaba. So these two women were making tawaf around the Kaaba, and the Kaaba was surrounded by idols, right? So as they're making tawaf, they kept, touching or kissing these two idols called Isaf and Naila. They would touch Isaf and Naila on every turn. As they would make the tawaf, they would touch Isaf and Naila. Does anybody know who Isaf and Naila were? I mean, at the moment they are statues, but before they became statues, they were basically a man and a woman who were in love with each other, and they couldn't get married. And so they decided, there's always a Layla Majnu somewhere, right? So they decided, I don't know what possessed them to decide this, but Isaf and Naila, because they couldn't get married, they decided we will go near the Kaaba and we will fornicate next to the Kaaba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned them into stone. Okay? And so this is their story. Alright? So it's not a very noble story. And can you see how Islam gives you aql and it rises you, right? It elevates your status, and how disbelief and kufr, it makes you slump and become more stupid and do more dumb things, right? And you go lower and lower and lower until, people think, do these people not even have any grey matter in their head, right? You see people doing all kinds of weird things. I've seen people with muthafs on their head like this. Honestly, these are probably some sects or something, but I'm just saying that when you have Islam, when you have Iman, right, you know what you are meant to do. But when you don't have that, you just plummet down and you do dumb things. So these people who are like about to commit fornication, right, these people are venerating them, giving them respect and touching them. This doesn't make any sense. Yes? You wanted to ask a question? So it's basically having intimate relations with of the opposite sex without marriage. Okay, so that's fornication. Okay, so Abu Dhar, who already hates idol worship, he sees them touching Isaf and Naila. And apparently he knows who Isaf and Naila were, right? So he just has this hatred inside his heart, right? So he said to them, he screams out to them, as if he hasn't got into enough trouble. He screams out to them and he says, why don't you erect statues of these, he says, why don't you make one of them have intercourse with the other? He screams this out to these women, right? So these women, right, they continue making tawaf. They think that we didn't hear this man correctly. They think, maybe we misunderstood what he said. He couldn't have said that. He must be saying something else. So they continue with their tawaf, touching Isaf and Naila. Then he screams out and says something much worse, which I will not even repeat. Okay? When they hear that, they are horrified. And they start screaming and going, and they go screaming, running off, right? Because they can't even believe that this man has said something like that. But you can see he's really put off by these idols and them touching these. I mean, like I said, these idols are not even saints or anything. They're somebody who are trying to do something bad near the Kaaba. So, he just says what he has to say. They go screaming off, right? And of course, people can hear them screaming from far. And they're screaming down the streets of Makkah, and they run into the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. And the Prophet ﷺ says to them, he says, what is wrong with you? Because they're really in shock, they look horrified. And they say, that heretic over there, that zindiq over there, they're thinking, who the hell is this man and what is he saying? So the Prophet ﷺ says, what is the matter with him? Because the Prophet ﷺ is a very calm person. He says, what is the matter with the man that you're pointing to over there? They say, he spoke a word that fills the mouth. It like tamla ul fam, it's a really horrible thing that he said. So the Prophet ﷺ, he goes to meet this man who has just spoken something really bad. And Abu Dhar and the Prophet ﷺ start to speak to each other. And when the Prophet ﷺ asks him, where are you from? He says, I'm from Ghifar. When he says that, the Prophet ﷺ puts his hand on his forehead. Because I told you, right, Ghifar are people that you don't really want to mess around with. You don't want to meet. They're known for killing, looting. They're thieves. They're like bandits. So he puts his hand on his forehead, right? And Abu Dhar says that when the Prophet ﷺ did that, he said, I got a feeling that the Prophet ﷺ was uncomfortable when I mentioned that I'm from Ghifar. So he said, I was about to take his hand and move his hand from his forehead, but Abu Bakr, he pushed my hand away and he stopped me from doing that. So he says that the conversation continued and Abu Dhar embraces Islam. He says his shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. So Abu Dhar was nearly there. He was just waiting to meet the Prophet ﷺ, and that sealed it for him, right? He just wanted to see it with his eyes and understand what the man had to say. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Dhar something very important. He said, keep your iman secret. Keep your Islam secret. Okay? Do you think that Abu Dhar did that? Abu Dhar went out the next day. And he went out in front of the people of Quraysh and he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu an... Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah. Okay, so just continuing with the story of Abu Dhar. So Abu Dhar, he announces 3 times the Shahada. He gets beaten up. And then the Prophet ﷺ tells him, he says, look, go back to your people. And when you tell your people about Islam, do da'wah to them. When you hear that, there is no longer any trouble and Islam is victorious, then you can come back. So, Abu Dhar, remember, he was in Makkah for how long?
30 days.
Over a month, probably, right? But out of those 40 days or 35 days or whatever, 30 days He did not even meet the Prophet ﷺ. So how many days was he actually with the Prophet ﷺ? Maybe 3 days, 4 days. Even out of that, a little bit of time he would have spent with him. So he does not know much. He knows very little. But he knows the basic concept of Islam. So he goes back to his people. And, few verses here and there, few ahadith. He goes to get back to his people. And he does dawah to his people, to his tribe. He tells them about Islam. He, does dawah to them. By the time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes hijrah, almost half of his tribe was Muslim. This is a big tribe, Al-Ghifar, yeah? Almost half was Muslim. And the other half, they said, we are waiting for the Prophet ﷺ to arrive in Medina, then we want to go and see him and meet him, and then we will also become Muslim. So that's basically his entire tribe, right? And what happens is, when the Prophet ﷺ arrives and they go to meet him, the whole tribe eventually becomes Muslim. Okay? And one day, when the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina, he saw a cloud of dust. And when you see something like that, you think, oh, maybe there's an army coming to attack Medina or the people of Medina, right? So everybody goes to grab their weapons because they think that someone is coming to attack them. And the Prophet ﷺ says, be Abu Dhar. And his prophecy is correct and it is true. And it was Abu Dhar with his entire tribe coming to give bay'ah, to pledge allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. And now there was rivalry between the tribes of Ghifar and Aslam. Okay, these tribes had names, right? Now Ghifar has become Muslim. When Aslam hears that the whole tribe of Ghifar has become Muslim and they have given bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ, they immediately went to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, we are the ones who want to become Muslim, because they are competing, right? And so the Prophet ﷺ says, Ghifar, may Allah forgive them, and Aslam, may Allah give them peace. 2 entire tribes became Muslim. How did the story start? With one man, Abu Dhar. One man's Islam can bring huge waves. And that's why saying the Shahada is not a small thing. My ancestors, they originally came from Georgia, which is near Chechnya, southern Russia. I think maybe 3 generations ago. And they were Christian. They were not Muslim. That one man, who is my great-great-great-grandfather, he accepted Islam. Do you think he would have ever thought that, we must be in hundreds now, coming down from that, and out of us, there are some of us who do dawah, who preach Islam, who do, other things. When a person says his shahada, you don't know what fruits will come out of that one shahada, of that one person. So that is why, there is such a huge reward in making someone Muslim or, making someone say their shahada, because that one person, he doesn't know what is going to come, what is going to follow. But, you don't know. Maybe people in their thousands. So with this one Abu Dhar saying his shahada, there were 2 entire tribes who became Muslim. There are many lessons to be learned from the story of Abu Dhar, but I don't want to detain you all. I don't know, Allahu Alam. But he wasn't from the tribe of Ghifar. I know everybody from the tribe of Ghifar became Muslim. Maybe, Allahu Alam, maybe he became Muslim. Shall we go through the lessons from the story next time? But will you remember the story? Because when I tell you the lessons, you should remember the story to learn the lessons. Yeah. So, what I will do is I will just quickly mention the lessons and we'll discuss them properly next time. So the first lesson you learn from his story is that anyone who sincerely looks for the truth, who is sincere, they will find it. You have to be really honest with yourself inside, that I really want to know what the truth is, not just pretending. If you are really sincere and you really want to know what is the truth, should we worship Allah? Should we worship Jesus? Should we worship idols? Should we, if you're really sincere and you want to know, Allah will guide you to the truth. Okay, that's number one. And the other thing is that investigate the matter. If you, for example, hear on the news that Muslims are terrorists, hijab is oppression, Muslim women are forced to wear, don't just believe what you hear. Come investigate. Come and speak to a Muslim woman. Ask her, is somebody forcing you to do this? Are you guys all going around killing people, shooting people? Find out the truth. Don't just believe what you hear. So that's the other thing. The third thing is that the Prophet ﷺ encouraged Abu Dhar, even though he knew very little bit. He's a new Muslim himself. But he said, go and teach other people. So, بَلِّغْ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. The Prophet ﷺ said that, convey from me, even if it is an ayah. Any little thing you know, share it, spread it, tell people. And you don't know, because what is in your control is to throw the seeds. For the seeds to take root and grow, this is up to Allah. And you don't know when that can happen. So you just throw the seeds. And the seeds go into people's hearts. When they grow, what happens? You never know. I will tell you a story connected to this next time, inshallah. And Abu Dhar was a great example of courage. Right? We can't deny that. And similarly, all the Sahaba, if you read about them in detail, they were all very brave. They were courageous. They were not scared. Today you see, especially our youth, they are embarrassed to tell people that they're Muslim. If you tell them to do salah, they'll say, we can't pray here. People will see us praying. So what if people see you praying? It's good if somebody sees you praying, they will see, that their religion teaches them to worship Allah wherever they are. They stop, they pray, they speak to their Lord. But, today people are ashamed to cover their hair, to do salah, they're ashamed of their Islam. The Sahaba, that's why the deen is on their shoulders. They were brave, they were confident. They knew this is the truth, this is the haqq, this is where the victory is going to come. And so they were not shy of this religion. Don't belittle any good deed. So, Abu Dhar, he knew very little bit about Islam. But he thought, okay, let me just tell whatever little I do know. Right? So anything little you know, anything little you do, even if you move something like there's this tissue on the floor and you think, let me just pick it and throw it in the bin. Don't think that this might be the difference between Jannah and Nar. On that day when you want good deeds in your scale, when your actions are being weighed, these small things will be of use to you. On that day you will think, why didn't I do more dhikr of Allah? Why didn't I say Subhanallah one more time? So don't think anything is small. Everything is going to matter on that day. So inshallah we'll end here and then we'll talk a little bit more about the lessons learned from the story. Wa subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.